Okay, thank you, Dr. Annie, for the response. First of all, I would like to welcome every one of you to our webinar session this afternoon. Okay, this CHECMA Qualitative webinar will be conducted into two series. Okay, today we are going to listen to our series 1, which entitled Qualitative Data Collection Strategies. On 21st of May, we are going to conduct our second series entitled ABCs of Qualitative Analysis using Atlas DI. So today, our title will be Qualitative Data Collection Strategies. Okay, we are very happy to have Dr. Sarima Said Abdullah with us to share her experiences regarding this qualitative data collection. So before I proceed and invite Dr. Sarima, I would like to read a little bit of her background. Okay, Dr. Sarima is actually an associate professor in the School of Education, University Utara Malaysia. She is currently the Deputy Director of the University Teaching and Learning Centre, UTLC UUM. Dr. Sarima received a Bachelor of Arts degree from the Texas A&M University, USA, and her master degree in education from the University of North Texas, USA. She obtained her PhD in educational psychology at the University of Birmingham, United Kingdom, to examine reading in English as a social practice by means of action research exploration. Since then, Dr. Sarima has continued to pursue her interest in researching and supervising undergraduate and postgraduate research on learning as social practice, adolescent literacy, and classroom interaction. And she also encourages the use of action research and qualitative research in researching social-related issues. Dr. Sarima has conducted trainings to lecturers, teachers, researchers, and students on action research, qualitative research, and in vivo qualitative data analysis, QDA, and currently has engaged in the use of Atlas DI as an alternative platform for QDA. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Sarima to share her knowledge and experiences with us. The floor is yours, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zahayu, for the introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. Inshallah, within these 30 minutes, I hope to share something, strategies. I'm not sure what could be defined as strategies, but I'm not going to spend time talking about different types of data collection methods. And because qualitative research strategies are numerous, so today I'm just going to focus on specific on interview, basics of doing in-depth interview. And in there, I will provide some tips and strategies in getting a lot of rich data. Let me start by sharing the slide. Feel free to interact with me either verbally, or you can also interact with me in the chat box. Okay, I hope to be able to finish this within roughly 30 minutes. I hope Dr. Zahayu will help me to keep time. All right, so basics of doing in-depth interview. I will start by sharing an example of, interview extract. Let's look at this briefly. I got this from my student during the initial stage of data collection. Just read through this and see what you think of this. So my first question is, does this look like a qualitative research interview question? Feel free to respond. Does this look like, okay, I've given the answer. Yeah? Jari nak tick cepat. Okay, this is, it looks like qualitative research because it's interview. People will say qualitative research is associated with interview. Okay, now does this, okay, Does this look like a semi-structured interview? Okay, I hope I'm going to do this right the next time. Does this look like, let me audience, does this look like a semi-structured interview? What makes it look like semi-structured interview? You can answer in the chat box. Anybody? It does look like semi-structured interview. Yes. Vivian, Nushazwani said no. Doesn't look like semi-structured interview. Okay. Why is that, Nushazwani? Anis Najiha says yes. Okay. I think some are saying yes and some are saying no. We'll look into this afterwards because it's half question and answer. All right. Open-ended. Okay. Let's see. That's open-ended. Yes. So roughly, so far we have only one no, but the rest are saying it's yes. Okay. Next question. Does it ask open question? We already have one answer before saying that it asks open question. Shazwani say more like open-ended. Yes. So it's okay, yeah, I agree with you. It could be a very unstructured interview if we look at the extreme end, but yeah, it could also be semi-structured interview. Okay, now, hold on a second, yeah. Let me. Right, let's move on. Okay, now, so my next question is, what do you think of the interview response? What do you think of it? Do write in the chat box whether it's good or bad. The responses, not the questions. I think the questions people kind of agree that it's open, yeah. But is the response okay? Mufli said too short, right? Too general, good, but too short. Okay, not much information, too short, right? Can be probed further, should have explored more on what she meant by education, right? Bad, not elaborated. Okay, I think too general. Okay, so basically everybody seems to know the answer. So which one? Which one seems to be too short? Okay, Rima says it's good because it gives reasons to the causes of why it happens. Okay, now which one is problematic? Now, because many of you are saying too short. Maybe the first question. All right, let's see the first question. They are just terrible. What's the problem with that, Ekini Oku? What about the second one? Okay, you think the interviewer viewer need to probe further, right? Okay, what about this one? Okay. Jen is merely answering, responding. Yeah. Okay. What about the next one? So I think you are all on the right track by saying that this is not elaborated, there needs to be probed further. So basically the responses are left unexplored. So what are the strategies? How can we overcome this? Now, this is my student initial stage of data collection. It seems to me that those who are responding do have familiarity with doing interview data collection. All right, what are the strategies? Somebody said probe, right? What else? What about wait time? And then I'm just going to share probing a little bit and then wait time. And then also observing the ethical guidelines. There are actually many strategies, but these are the few that I think I can cover within this short period of time. And then the last bit, the researcher as human instrument, as assuming all these other three that has been shown. Okay, let's look at probing. Let's look at the first strategy. Okay, now Jen answered, as you said, it's too short. What would be your suggestion to how would it be possible to probe? What would be the question? As we know, terrible doesn't explain a lot. Now, so what would be the question? Okay, Masrur said, give example. How would you ask that? What do you mean by terrible? Okay. What else? Follow-up questions, such as, Mariam? Ask Jen, who is Akid Cantik? Anybody wants to speak out? Follow-up questions, because here we cannot assume, right? Terrible can mean a lot of things. If we put terrible on a scale, it could be just some difficulty, or it could be seriously terrible. Okay, perhaps you can provide some examples on the terrible behavior. Sorry, can you explain? Yeah, it's worrisome. So, but what is worrisome? How do we get to understand what terrible means or what worrisome means? Can you explain more about that? Yes. Good. Okay. Basically you all know this, right? So in other words, the researcher cannot use common sense to interpret what Jen means. The difficulty is with initial stage of learning to do interview is people kind of assume that, you know, that answer is enough. And so all you need to do is just interpret according to your understanding. But knowing qualitative research is about understanding from the perspective of the participant. There's no way that we can actually interject with our own understanding. We cannot define the meaning of terrible. Okay, so in other words, we need to have the tangible explanation for every possible verbal response. And as we can see in the chat box, there are many ways for us to do this. Please define, give example. What do you mean? So the probing is a common thing to do in making sure that students, Jen will respond in a greater way. Right. So these are some of my examples. So I think basically the same thing that has been given in the chat box. Okay. What about this one? What would be the probing question? They don't know how to respect others' rights. How do we get Jen to talk about this?
Perhaps can ask, have you seen an example of this happening? Could you elaborate further on that?
Yeah. Thank you, Ashwanda. Ask them to elaborate on that. Because the participants are supposed to have the experience, right? So we just need to tap on their experience by asking them to provide example. What if we probe and the answer is non-stop or too much? Or is there any too much in qualitative question? That's a good question. Can we lead into too much answer? I think as a qualitative researcher, we have to guide the participants' response as long as I think the response is helping us to understand what the participant means by terrible, or what the participant means by to respect, not knowing how to respect others' rights, then there is never too much. But if the danger with allowing to be too open is that there's a possibility of the participant going astray. So you need to pull back to I think in qualitative research, we respect the participants' experience. So naturally, we would really want to know, but then we will have to draft them back to the actual question. Okay, yes, Amli, any situation related to you? Yes, that's also another way to probe. Okay, so again, I'm repeating that as a researcher, we just cannot assume that we know. And the difficulty with not getting enough answer is that when we do the analysis, we will face a lot of problem in analyzing our data, because all the thing that you get is terrible, not respecting others' rights, when actually the responses can be much, much richer. So could you explain what you mean, or any example that you can think of? All right. Okay, so that's probing. So this is another example that I think we can skip this one, but basically possible probes would be things like who should educate them, what sort of education, when can they be taught. All the WIH questions are important questions to be asked. Now, of course, the questions have to be open, but I've seen some researchers who do ask closed questions because, to facilitate in the responses, but closed questions have to be used sparingly. Maybe, because the participant has difficulty in providing example, maybe the probing question could be, are you thinking of your own child? So to start off, and then to move away from that closed question to asking again a very open question. All right. Okay, now this is the second strategy. Do you still remember what the second strategy is?
Yeah, wait.
Wait, yes. The problem is, as researchers, we may be too eager to keep to time, and we tend to rush the participants. We feel guilty if we drag the interview for too long. And the point that I'm making here is that we have to understand that some participants, just like if we are teachers, in the context of teaching or in the context of dealing with our customers, whoever they are, we have different types of people. There are people who are very reactive, and there are people who are very reflective. Reactive people, they, before even you finish asking question, they will already respond. So, this is very common if like a teacher asks a student, 11 multiplied by, but I'm answering already without knowing multiply by what. Reactive people are too quick at responding, and sometimes their responses are, too quick that they misunderstand our question. But there is the other side of people who are very reflective. I am that kind of person. Reflective people, they need time to think about what they're, how to respond. And so the second strategy is the wait time. We have to make time or give time for the participants to think about how to respond, to recollect information and experiences. What are the examples? How can we actually wait? Can you think of examples? What is a wait time, by the way? And how long would we wait? I am waiting. A wait time is basically we wait for the person to think, but of course we cannot wait for too long. But there are ways that we can actually help this person to respond. For example, by you can take your time to answer the question. Yes, that is kind of, we motivate them to, you can think about it. You don't have to like immediately respond, but by also keeping momentary silence, but not too long. Then it would be like, fishy, that kind of thing. But we wait, and sometimes it helps to give verbal cues. Uh-huh, mm, uh, and maybe I can rephrase this question, things that you can actually help them to think. Don't rush the participant by asking new questions. Definitely, you cannot rush. If you rush, you're going to get people like Jen, who the interview ended up just, something that could happen over a 30-minute interview ended up within just 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah, we cannot rush. So verbal cues, simply by maybe repeating what the participant has said earlier. You said terrible. Could you then we probe them. So probing and wait time have to work together. And even rephrasing, or you said just now that their social behavior is terrible. What examples can you give? So it works wait time together with probing. Yeah. So could you elaborate? What do you mean? So these are the things that we ask as we wait. And then, of course, the key here is be patient. I find a lot of people, including myself, sometimes although I said I'm a reflective person, but in asking question, I have no patience. We have no patience. We just want to rush through. This happens even as researchers, as educators, or even in regular conversations, we tend to ask questions before we get the response, we are already moving in by posing our own responses. So that's the danger with it. So wait time it works very well, taking into consideration the different kind of people who respond to us, right? If you're trying to give out clues, would it be bias in getting the answers that we want? All right. Yes, I think that's a good question. What kind of clues do we give? All right. We kind of, to give clues is good, but not too much of it. I remember a student of mine who interviewed students about reading strategies, and she was using this big term reading strategy. So the students were having trouble understanding what strategies are. And then the interviewer said, strategies like rereading, like looking up meaning in the dictionary. So you're giving cues. And the student ended up answering, oh yeah, that's the strategy that I usually use. So in a way, that is leading the students to respond to in particular ways. So the key here is how much clues can we give? So for instance, if the student don't understand the word strategies, well, his strategies, like if you have some problem in reading, what will be the way for you to solve the problem? How do you deal with it if you don't understand something? So in other words, we are not giving examples, but rather rephrasing our question in such a way that, will allow them to think further what the meaning of strategy is. We get the copy of slide. Yes, I will share the slide afterwards. Right? Okay, so be patient is key in interviewing. So wait time is very important, but of course we cannot wait for too long, right? So we have to have those moments of stopping ourselves from interjecting, but then there must be some kind of cues that we give to allow for them to respond. And we must understand sometimes the participants themselves are looking at our face, looking at us, looking at us for assurance, for clues of what they are to respond. So having this creativity to actually wait and then move by using the probing question will help. Okay, for how long will you wait? I think it shouldn't be too long. If it's too long, like 5 minutes, that's too long. I think just roughly about 30 seconds, but that 30 seconds is not just you standing stone-like facing them, but you kind of just like one response given just now, take your time. You don't have to rush. Just think about it first, you know, something to kind of motivate them to speak. Not total silence. Total silence will be like, you'll be like, you know, they will feel rather uncomfortable. Now, so that brings to the next strategy. Okay, I'll raise this problem. Participants have reservations because they feel insecure, they feel unsafe, and they feel like, you know, they worried that they might be giving wrong answers. And then there's worry about researchers' expectations and researchers' authority. Okay, let me see. Some may be unwilling. Okay, how do we get? Okay. Good question, Lakshmi. We're actually into that now. How to get the participants to open up? Some may be unwilling to tell certain things. You're right. Okay. Yes, just easygoing conversations. You are right, Mira. Okay. Now they are unwilling for various reasons. Some because they are, you know, they are tongue-tied, but most often because of these reservations, and there are other reservations as well. But mainly to, you know, they need to feel secure. They need to feel safe to respond, and so they need to perceive the researcher in terms of trust, safety, genuine intention, and zero implications. So this is why the third strategy, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, is to observe apa tu? To observe the ethical guidelines. I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but I am repeating so that, you know, sometimes we read about the guidelines, but when we actually practice it, we have difficulties. Participants, you know, need to be able to trust us that what we do is as we have made sure that we are safeguarding them against any kinds of exposures or dangers. So initially, when you start the research, when you approach the participants seeking their approval to participate in your study, you need to provide some information about the research. For instance, very important that you lay out in the open what the research is about. No hiding of information, because you know, what if you really want to study teachers or parents' views of children's social behavior, you need to spell it out, define what you mean by social behavior. So that information is very, very important. And next, will you reveal their identities? Now, identities is not just a matter of the participant's name. It can also be about the affiliation. Let me give you an example. If let's say you are interviewing teachers about discipline problem in a school where discipline is high, is notorious there, and how do you protect this teacher's identity? By just giving them a different name does not help if you forget to hide the affiliation. So for instance, in your report, you say the participants are teachers from grade C school with high level of discipline problems and notorious principal in the northern part of Kedah. I can tell you, people of interest who read your report will kind of can zoom into that particular grade C school that is notorious. And then you will actually expose the people. So concealing the identities is not just a matter of creating new names or hiding their names, but also protecting the affiliation, the area where they're working. So you need to know what are the things that can actually expose them. And then there's also this idea of protecting their privacy. There are things that we can ask. There are things that they will say, this is off record. You're not going to report that. I'm just telling you. But this is a thing that I want to keep private. Or don't ask me that question. So we have to kind of, as a researcher, have to figure out how to ask the question in a different way without, making the participant feel uncomfortable. And then there's this, will your data collection impact them in any way? With genuine intention, we will be able to tell them that this is for PhD purposes, this is to understand your issues, in order to suggest better alternatives. So intention has to be clear, and then implications have to be spelled out. Sometimes we forget that in reporting there are things that we may say in our report that the participant may not be happy about. So that's why later on, when you learn more about, in other sessions, this idea of member check is a very important strategy in making sure the participants have the right to look at your transcript, your analysis, so that they have the opportunity to say, okay, this one I'm going to have to retract. But of course, in doing that, you have to make sure in your informed consent, you have to spell out that they can do that within a certain amount of time, but after which they cannot do that anymore. So in other words, you're giving them that choice. But of course, that choice has expiry date. Okay, and then of course, other things like how long is each interview session. A lot of my students, they just tell the participants, one time, and then they end up with, not having enough time to do the interview. Okay, I have 5 minutes left. All right. Now, basically, all what we are doing is actually all these three strategies are encompassed within the idea of researcher as human instrument. Basically, if you want them to be open up, you want them to not be fearful, and you want to prevent from fabrication and making up stories, one of the things that you have to do is, yes, you have to be casual, make the interview informal, and then eliminate or loosen the tie. When we go with the authority, we have this thing that we impose on other people of our authority, that people will be scared to talk to us, especially when teachers are interviewing students or leaders interviewing their workers. And then interact in language that can be understood, for instance, using mother tongue, allow for alternatives, accommodate. In other words, as researcher, we have to accommodate, allow for code switching. And if they're not happy with interviewing, what other alternatives can you provide? Maybe diary entries or focus group. And of course, always rephrasing, simplify questions, and so on. All right, now this is the example of my student's report. Based on the earlier interview, she had managed to learn to interview properly. And as you can see on the screen, the data is much, much richer. Mrs. T here is talking about terrible, and Mrs. T explained what that is terrible meant here. So I think that's it. From me. Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Right, maybe.
Thank you, Dr. Sarima. Okay, any additional question from the participant? Okay, if there is no question, I would like to thank Dr. Sarima for very good sharing with us. But before we end our session, could everyone turn on your video so that we can take photo? Okay, Dr. Ani, are you taking the photo? Maybe you can count so that everybody can prepare themselves.
Hello everyone, can we get more people to switch on your webcam? Okay, so we have a few pages. Since we do not know which page we will be, please continue to keep smiling, everyone. Okay. All right. Please smile to the webcam, please. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And second page, can you please keep smiling? And final page. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you everyone. So I would like to invite you all to our second seminar on 21st of May, next Sunday. So hope to see you again. Thanks again, Dr. Sarima, for a very informative sharing just now. And thanks everyone for attending. With that, thank you and see you again later. Assalamualaikum and bye.